This week on Roadmap, William Lowe and I are going to talk a little bit about one-handed and adaptive dressing. So, uh, this is something that's a little tricky when you first have your stroke because, well, if you have serious hemiplegia, you're not lifting your foot very well. It makes it pretty hard to get in pants. You have to deal with putting the pants over the affected foot and then seeing where that leaves you in terms of getting the other foot in. Uh, Same with your arm. So, so we'll try and give you some ideas of things that work for us and things that we learned from school or PTs and OTs. So, William, I know you had some thoughts on this. So, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I think when it comes to recovery after stroke, learning how to dress yourself with one hand is actually pretty important because, for one, it helps you maintain a degree of independence following your stroke, and it also helps to, I guess, improve your quality of life and allow you to, I guess, problem solve when you run out of insurance and you're perhaps living at home by yourself and you're trying to figure out how to do some things which might have required two hands before your stroke. And obviously now with the impact of your stroke, trying to come to terms with how you can, I guess, adapt to your environment. I think that one-handed tech. I think that when it comes to one-handed dressing techniques, if you can incorporate your affected side a lot more in your recovery after stroke, it's actually extremely beneficial because the research shows that when you can get the affected side to play an active role rather than allowing it to chill and relax, then this can actually allow your brain to connect the dots a lot quicker in your recovery after stroke. And it can help you overcome something which is called unilateral neglect, which is basically a term which is used to describe when stroke survivors get into a situation where they're using their non-affected side so much for everything that they forget that their affected side is actually there, and this can actually impact their recovery after stroke because your brain essentially forgets that it has two arms rather than just one. So ways you can actually incorporate your affected side when it comes to dressing, especially within the context of one-handed dressing techniques, is, for example, if you're putting on a shirt or if you're putting on pants, what you ideally want to do is you want to focus on putting your affected arm or your affected leg in the pants hole or sleeve first. And the reason why you do this is because you obviously know that your non-affected side can take care of itself when you're weaving that side through a sleeve or through the other pants hole. So this is a great way to problem solve, and it also helps you to avoid getting into a tricky situation where the piece of clothing which you're trying to put on is completely tangled up, and it's going to be quite hard to obviously problem solve and get yourself out of that without, I mean, obviously having to address the affected side when you might not necessarily know where it is in the piece of clothing which you're putting on. Now, Ralph, earlier you and I we were talking about some of the ways that you incorporated this in your recovery after stroke. Obviously, using the affected side to play a more active role when it came to obviously dressing yourself. I was just wondering, would you like to share some of those experiences which you shared with me earlier with the folks watching?
Sure. I didn't know anything about the research, but typically, typical of my recovery, I jumped in and went gung ho and ended up doing what apparently is best. I've always figured I'd try and get the hand going. You have to sometimes learn how to do a shirt button one-handed or whatever. But as soon as I could, I got the other hand up and was trying to help. Same with everything. Um, so yeah, and let's see, some things that work for me. When I was putting on pants or a shirt, I would like the shirt, I would always make sure I held it up by the body and let the arms go out and then lay it on my lap. Because I found if you had it like laid out, you didn't tend to get into a tangle so much. And your unaffected arm's a lot better at like doing that, to get into a sleeve than your affected arm. That's another reason you put it in. You got a lot more flexibility. But if you can avoid getting your shirt or your pants all tangled up in the first place, you won't be so frustrated. A lot of people have trouble getting it over their head. I didn't seem to have that problem, but I hear about it a lot. Same with the pants. I'd hold them up by the waistband, make sure the legs, shake them out, make sure the legs were good. So when you go to put them in, you don't put two legs in one or put them on backwards, and end up with a big tangle. Because you can't push the affected arm through. You can't push your affected leg through very well. So one other thing I did was, this is a sock, but I bunched up the pants starting at the bottom. That way you have less to go to the hole. So you can just, well, it's easier with pants because they're bigger than with a sock. But you can just you bunch up the pants and hold as much as you can. And then I kind of put the hole over my affected leg and pulled them up, put my other leg in. Socks I did sort of the same way, but I'll let you teach everybody that cool sock trick you taught me earlier. Let's see. So what else? Putting on pulled up your pants. I actually made a video about this because it's a big issue for a lot of people. It's pretty simple. If you take your affected thumb and you can start to pull them up in the front, and you can go around the back. Your unaffected thumb will go all the way around 3/4 to the side of your affected side. Then you come back around and get them again, and just keep working your way up with the one thumb. So that's one way I found that was helpful. Also, I was talking about bunching up the pants. After I laid out the shirt and I got my affected arm in it, then I'd like make sure I knew where the hole for the head was. Maybe that's why I didn't have any trouble. So if you just go putting your head into the middle of the chest or back, you may not get it up to where the hole is and get it through. So those are a couple of things. Yeah, I always try to use both hands whenever I could. So why don't you tell people a little bit about that way that you were taught in either school or by a therapist to put on your socks? That's a good trick, and I wasn't taught it. They taught us at rehab how to get in a car and a couple of interesting things. We made a egg salad sandwich, but there was nothing much about dressing. The only time I ever learned much about dressing was when I took a survivor to OT. She wanted to get her arm better. The OT was basically teaching her adaptive techniques with putting clothespins, so you could pull on the clothespin to get your something closed, that kind of thing. And the person I was taking didn't want to listen because she wanted to get her hand back anyway. So why don't you tell everybody a bit about the that sock technique, William?
Yeah, sure. So before we get into that, I mean, I just want to second what you mentioned, Ralph, about obviously laying out your clothes before you actually put them on. I think, and I would recommend, especially in recovery after stroke, if you're in the early days of your recovery and you're looking to do, I guess, dress yourself independently, that you do all of this sitting down, because when you're sitting down and when you're not standing up, it actually allows you to plan out things a lot easier. Obviously, with Ralph's recommendation of putting out the shirt and putting out your pants in front of you, that allows you to orient, where you need to put your affected arm or your affected leg in first before you allow your non-affected side to obviously take care of itself. Another good thing about sitting down is that it's a optimal position for when you try to tackle more trickier items or pieces of clothing, such as putting on socks. And when it comes to putting on socks, you have to accept that it's because you don't have the use of two hands, you're probably not going to be able to put on socks like you used to before you had your stroke. So that being said, the way I was taught and the way I picked this up through OT school and also when I had my stroke was you want to aim to put on socks cross-legged. And how this would work is obviously you would be sitting down, and what you would do is you would cross your affected leg over your non-affected leg. And while you're in this position where both of your legs are crossed over, what you want to do with the sock is you want to take one sock and you want to put in and you want to place the sock on top of your big toe. And once you place the sock on your big toe, you want to pull on the sock and use your big toe as sort of leverage while you grab the rest of the fabric of the sock and you weave it over the remaining toes. Now, once you've passed the little toe and you start to make a little bit of headway towards your heel, then that's when the entire sock is over all of your toes. And then you can start to pull with your non-affected hand all the way down towards your heel. And obviously, once you've gotten the sock down to your heel, then it's quite easy to obviously pull the sock completely up your calf or towards your leg. So that's the technique I was taught, and the technique I picked up in OT school. And as you can see, it's a lot more efficient because when you're sitting cross-legged, it does allow you to get into a position where you can use that big toe quite well to help you guide the sock over the entire foot. Now, another good thing about sitting down cross-legged is that it also allows you to put on your pants quite well as well. And earlier, Ralph and I, we were talking about, I guess, our own approaches to obviously putting on a belt onto a pair of pants, because before your stroke, obviously, everyone would put on a belt while they're standing up and they would weave it through their body. But obviously in recovery after stroke, because you don't have the use of the affected side, it can be a little bit tricky to orient yourself in a position such that you can get the belt through all the loops. So one thing I would recommend with that is before you actually think about putting on the belt onto your pants, one thing you could do is obviously you could lay out your shorts or you could lay out your pants in front of you in the bed, and you could aim to put the belt through maybe half of the loops first. This way, what you've done is you've actually done 50% of the task first. And because the belt's not fully in the pants, your pants won't be so tight that you can't put them on. So once you've already put the belt through a couple of the loops, what you can do is you can obviously sit down cross-legged again, put the pants on through your affected leg first, and then use your non-affected side to put your non-affected leg through the remaining hole of the pants. And once you've done that, you now have a pair of pants on where you've got the belt through 50% of the loops or most of the loops, and then you can just use your non-affected side to weave the belt through the remaining loops until you meet the belt at the front of your stomach. So that's just an easier way to put on a belt. Of course you could do it standing up, but obviously in recovery after stroke, your ability to orient yourself, it can be impacted by the stroke, and it's going to be very easy to miss some belt loops when you're trying to attempt to standing up. So that's one way I would recommend to put on a belt, and also putting on socks as well. And as you can see with the things that Ralph and I have shared, it's actually quite strategic. And when you take the time to think, a couple of steps ahead in your recovery after stroke, it can definitely make your quality of life a lot better, and it can allow you to, I guess, regain and become more independent in your recovery and then doing some of the activities after your stroke, which might have required a lot of dexterity before you had your stroke anyway. Um, so with that being said, I just want to pass back to you, Ralph. I know you had you've gone through your recovery for quite a long time now, and you've really seen everything. Did you have anything you want to share? Anything which might have popped up in your mind after I just shared those techniques with everyone?
Sure. Yeah, before I didn't, I guess neither of us said anything about make sure you're seated, because that's just going to be a lot safer. Anybody who's, doing one-handed dressing isn't going to be, balancing on one leg or anything and put pants on the way they used to. Yeah, so, and safety is real important. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I found it easier to put my I'd put my pants on. You can't, it's hard to get them over your butt without standing up a little bit. So I would stand up and zip them. You can zip them one-handed, even if you can't do the button one-handed. If you know how to do a zipper, you zip them all the way up and you fold the tab down. The zipper has a little thing and it won't unzip, so you don't even actually have to do the button. And if you've got a belt, you definitely don't have to do the button. Anyway, so I would stand up kind of, but I'd do it on the bed because I don't know, I always seem to be getting dressed on the bed because it's near my closet. And so I'd stand up, but I'd put I'd lean into the bed just a little bit, put the back of my thighs against the bed so I'm really not balancing. Get the pants up, and then I just do the same thing like I was talking about with your thumb. Feed the first one like this, and you can go around, pull them through. Actually, you probably get the second one here too, and then just the one in the back and the other two. But that was just me. So let's see. Once you get your shoes, socks on, you might want to put your shoes on. Tying your shoes is a whole trip. I tried to work both hands and learn how to do it the way I used to, or as close as I could remember to the way I used to. There are plenty of videos on the YouTube about how to tie your shoes one-handed. Same is true to a slightly lesser degree about putting your hair back one-handed. Again, I try to get that hand back there and be able to pull mine back, and then it's kind of complex, wrapping the thing and holding it and passing it to the other hand and back and forth. It's kind of a complex motion. I've seen mostly women do it one-handed, and they have different techniques. So one would put a little clip to hold it while she got I saw somebody else brace it like against the wall while she got the rubber band. Anyway, there are some videos on how to put your hair back one-handed. I got a couple of people in Stroke Buddies that actually posted a video of it. So if you want to put your shoes on, it's difficult too. One thing that you can do, one thing to do if you got sneakers or something is loosen them up all the way and use your foot to hold them down and pull the tongue all the way back and loosen them as much as you can. Make as big an opening, especially on the affected one, as you can, because then you have a bigger target. Another thing that's handy to have, only costs a few bucks, $4 or $5, is a tall shoehorn. They make big tall shoehorns that you can do without having to bend over so far, and that's real good for getting your heel in. And of course, the one thing that we skipped over is if you don't want to button shirts, put on belts, do zippers and everything, get yourself some sweatpants and longer short sleeve t-shirts, and adapt your clothing to be easier to get on and off. So that's pretty much all I have, William. You have anything else?
No, nothing else. I think that about covers it. I can't think of anything else related to one-handed dressing techniques. Other than I hope everyone watching this found this beneficial, and especially the sock technique. you're able to use some of the ideas that Ralph and I shared in this roadmap and towards your recovery to help benefit yourselves. Because at the end of the day, that's what these roadmaps are for. It's to help support stroke survivors in their recovery after stroke, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and things don't have to be as difficult as they are, and you can obviously achieve your best recovery possible.
Well, and as a part of that, one of the things that we try and teach or preach or whatever is to, William and I both had strokes, but our strokes were different, and your stroke was different. And one of the things we try and teach is that you have to learn how to pay attention to your body, what works for you, and adapt. All these things that some we were taught, but some of these things we figured out on our own. And that's a real useful skill. So, part of this whole thing of stroke recovery is the more you can pay attention to your body, pay attention to what works for you, both in exercise and something like adaptive or one-handed dressing, better off you're going to be. The more innovative you are, the more you try things. And like William started it all off with, get that affected hand involved in whatever it can do. So the last thing you want to do is have it hang by your side and forget about it, because it's hard to overcome neglect. Supposedly, I wouldn't know. I didn't go anywhere near neglect. I just tried to use mine. No matter what I could do with it, when I couldn't move my fingers that well, I'd use it to pin things down. So try and figure things out for yourself. Pay attention to what works for you. If it's not working, try and figure out how you can adapt it. So I guess, William, with that, unless you got something else, we'll say goodbye to the folks, and we'll see everybody next time on Roadmap, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ralph.
All right. Thank you.